Welcome back to the deep dive. When you sent over those sermon notes about the history of Christmas in America and some reflections on faith, it's not a connection I honestly would have made on my own. But that's what I love about these deep dives. Always something new. Are you ready to get into it?
Absolutely. Christmas, we all think we know it, but there's always more to uncover.
Totally. The thing that jumped out at me was the whole war on Christmas debate. Feels very modern, but the sermon notes mentioned something historical that kind of blew my mind.
Oh, you mean about how Christmas was actually banned?
Yeah.
In the Massachusetts colony in the 1600s?
It's pretty wild.
Yeah. For 20 years, celebrating Christmas was illegal. Puritans thought it was too rowdy, too far from the religious meaning. Could you imagine that today?
It's hard to fathom, isn't it? Makes you think, though, how Christmas has always been a bit controversial, maybe even from the very beginning. That's a great point. And it connects to a theme in the sermon, the idea that maybe instead of fighting for just the acknowledgement of Christmas, the focus should be on helping people understand and believe in the actual meaning of it.
Right. Less about the outward stuff and more about what it represents at its core.
Exactly. And the sermon uses the writings of the Apostle John to approach this. John was writing when Christianity was new, often misunderstood. So how did he share the message of Christmas?
Well, he focuses on a specific idea, the Word becoming flesh.
That phrase, it's powerful, but honestly, I'm not sure I fully get it.
Well, that's where John gets interesting. He draws a contrast between Christianity and other major world religions. Think about figures like Zoroaster, Buddha, Muhammad. They received enlightenment in moments of solitude, right? Away from daily life.
Yeah, like they had to withdraw from the world to find truth.
Exactly. But John presents a completely different origin story. The Word becoming flesh, as described in the Gospel of John, is about God coming directly into human existence, not apart from it. It's not escaping the world. It's God embracing it, becoming one of us.
Wow, I never thought of it like that. It completely reframes the Christmas story.
It does. And this idea of embodiment of God choosing to experience life as we do is key to understanding the Christian message. Not about abstract concepts, it's a lived experience.
So how does that idea of embodiment play into eternal life? The sermon notes spend a lot of time on that, too.
And it's very clear that eternal life isn't just living forever in the future. It's about experiencing a deep connection with God right here, right now, in this moment. It's a relationship that changes us from the inside out.
I love how the sermon uses that image of an oasis to illustrate that. Just like water brings life to a parched land, knowing Christ brings life and flourishing to our souls. It's not just intellectual, it's an experience that changes everything.
You've hit on something important there. That oasis imagery isn't just poetic. It's a challenge to us. Think about a time you were really thirsty. What would you do for a sip of water?
Oh, I'd do just about anything.
Exactly. And that's the kind of longing that thirst the sermon is talking about. A thirst for something deeper, more meaningful than what the world usually offers. And it's a thirst that only a relationship with Christ can truly satisfy.
It's making me rethink my own relationship with faith. It's not just about believing certain things, it's about seeking that deep, transformative connection.
And that's a journey best not traveled alone. That's where fellowship community comes in. Remember John, exiled on the Isle of Patmos? He still found comfort through visions of Christ with the church.
That's interesting. We put so much emphasis on individual belief these days. But John seems to be saying faith is meant to be lived out in community with others.
Exactly. It's in sharing our experiences, supporting one another, learning together that our faith comes alive. Which brings us to another point. The power of personal conviction.
Right. The sermon tells that story about the speaker visiting a beautiful church in Europe, grand building filled with incredible art. But the sermon delivered with no passion kind of ruined it.
Like the lack of enthusiasm just deflated the whole thing. It shows a crucial truth. Our passion for our beliefs, it's contagious.
So it's not enough to know the Christmas story we have to be captivated by it ourselves. That energy, that genuine excitement will resonate with others more than any argument.
Passion is persuasive. It's not about forcing beliefs, but letting our own love for the story come through.
Which leads to the sermon's challenge. To engage deeply with the Christmas story and let it resonate in our own lives.
Not just going through the motions, but wrestling with what it means to us personally. Not to win a war on Christmas, but to foster a deeper, more authentic connection to the message.
You know, it's funny. We hear the Christmas story year after year, but it's easy to just let it kind of wash over you. The sermon, though, it's really pushing for something deeper, more active engagement with it all.
Yeah, one of the things that really stood out to me was that encouragement to look beyond the surface. We know the basic story, but what about the details? the implications of it all.
Yeah, like the angel Gabriel appearing to Mary. We've heard it 1,000 times. But the sermon asks, what are the implications of that? Why Mary? Why then? What does it tell us about how God works?
Right, like it suggests that God uses the unexpected, the seemingly insignificant to do extraordinary things.
It challenges our assumptions about who's worthy or capable of being used by God. Makes me wonder if I've underestimated myself sometimes or the people around me.
And then there's the story of the wise men.
Yeah.
We picture these regal figures, but they were astrologers, practically on the fringes of society. And yet they were the ones who recognized Jesus.
And their gifts too, gold, frankincense, myrrh. We focus on how exotic they are, but the sermon asks, what do they represent? What's the deeper meaning?
They represent sacrificed generosity, a willingness to give up something precious, to honor something even more valuable.
I never thought about it that way. It's like we're being encouraged to see beyond just the literal gifts, to see them as symbols of the kind of heart we should have.
It's almost like those gifts are being presented to us today, isn't it? And the question is, what sacrifices are we willing to make? What treasures are we holding on to that we might need to offer up?
That's a powerful challenge, especially during Christmas when it's so easy to get caught up in all the consumerism and buying gifts. Good reminder to step back and ask what really matters.
And the sermon really emphasizes that this kind of deep engagement with the story should lead to joy, to a sense of excitement that we want to share.
Yeah, I love that line from the sermon. We're writing these things so that our joy may be complete. Speaks to how contagious authentic faith can be.
It reminds me of that story about the church in Europe, the beautiful building but the uninspired sermon. How our passion or lack of it really impacts others.
It's like if we're going to share this message effectively, we need to be genuinely moved by it ourselves. Our enthusiasm should be real, not forced.
Exactly. And that's how we move beyond just talking about Christmas to actually living out the message. It's not about winning arguments, but letting our own love for the story come through.
I love that. Letting our actions speak louder than words. Much more powerful way to share the spirit of Christmas. I feel like this whole deep dive has really changed how I think about Christmas. It's not just about the gifts or the decorations anymore. It's about this deeper longing for connection, for meaning, for something more.
And the amazing thing is, the Christmas story itself, it points us toward exactly that. It's not just a nice story. It's a message that can totally change how we understand God ourselves, the whole world.
I think what really sticks with me is that idea that God came into the world in such a humble, vulnerable way. It's not at all like the image we have of a distant, all-powerful God.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of the Christmas message. It reminds us that God isn't somewhere out there separate from us. God is right here, right now with us in all the mess, the joy, the sadness, all the everyday stuff of life.
And that changes everything, doesn't it? It means our lives, even the ordinary parts, they have real meaning.
Exactly. And it means our relationships, our work, our struggles, even our failures, they can all become chances to connect with something bigger than ourselves.
I love that. It's like the Christmas story invites us to see the world in a new way, to find the sacred in the ordinary.
And to live with purpose and passion. Remember the sermon talked about how true faith, it's not passive, it's active. It's about engaging with the world, with our communities, with everything in front of us.
So this Christmas, maybe it's not about winning a war on Christmas, but about letting the message win us over.
That's a great way to put it. It's about letting that message change our hearts, our minds, and how we live.
It's about living the story, not just hearing it. And maybe that's the best way to start a real conversation, to share that joy and hope with everyone around us.
A little enthusiasm can make a big difference.
Until next time, keep diving deep.